Hello, my dear friends, and welcome back to another insightful and transformative episode here at English in Fluency. This is the channel where we journey together, a place where we learn to use the beautiful English language not just to communicate, but to connect more deeply with ourselves, to grow into the people we are meant to be, and to build a more meaningful life. Step by careful step, and word by thoughtful word. Thank you so much for choosing to be here with me today, for lending me your time and your attention. From the very bottom of my heart, thank you for the incredible love and the amazing support you show for this podcast. Every message, every listen, every share, it is a gift that I treasure. It brings me an immense sense of joy to know that so many of you from every corner of this beautiful world are using this space to learn, to build your confidence, and to improve your English skills. So, from my heart to yours, thank you. My name is Alex, and I am here with you today, as always, to be your companion and your guide, to help you practice your English listening and your English speaking, while we also explore a powerful idea that can be genuinely useful for your life. In this podcast, our mission is to help you become better in English, and also better in life, because I am deeply convinced that when we grow in both our language skills and our personal mindset, we begin to move with a new kind of grace and power towards our most important goals and our most cherished dreams. Today's topic is one that I believe is fundamental to the human experience, a skill that sits at the very heart of our ability to progress, to adapt, and to thrive. The topic is creative problem solving. But before we define those words, I want you to imagine something with me. Picture yourself standing in a long, quiet hallway. At the end of the hallway, there are two doors. The first door is familiar. It is made of solid, comfortable wood. You know exactly what is behind it. A safe, predictable room that you have been in 1,000 times before. There are no surprises there, but also no new discoveries. Then, there is the second door. This door is different. It seems to shimmer with a faint light. You cannot see what is behind it. It is the door of the unknown. It represents a new path, a new idea, a new way of being. Standing there, which door do you feel drawn to? Many of us, most of the time, instinctively choose the first door, the safe door, the known path. But life, in its wisdom, will inevitably place problems and challenges in our way that cannot be solved in that familiar room. Life will present us with situations where the old answers no longer work, where the old maps no longer lead anywhere. And in those moments, we are brought back to that hallway, standing before that second door. Creative problem solving is the courage to turn the handle on that second door. It is the willingness to step into the unknown, not with a guarantee of success, but with a spirit of curiosity and a trust in your own ability to figure things out. In this episode, we are going to learn how to become more comfortable in that hallway, how to become more confident in turning that handle. We will explore this vital topic from many different angles. We will discover that creativity is not a rare gift for a select few, but an innate human skill that we can all cultivate. We will look at the invisible walls, the fears and habits that keep us locked in that first familiar room. And most importantly, I will share with you a set of keys, practical strategies and tools that you can use to unlock that second door and step into a world of new possibilities. This is a deep and important conversation, and it is a long and detailed one. So I invite you to find a comfortable space, to relax, and to open your mind. This is not just an English lesson. It is an invitation to become the architect of your own solutions, the designer of your own, more vibrant life. So please, take a deep breath, and let's begin this journey together, right here, on English in Fluency. So, what exactly is creative problem solving? Let's take our time to break down this important concept in a way that is simple, clear, but also deep and meaningful. First, let's look at the two parts of the phrase. A problem, in its most basic sense, is simply a gap, a space between where you are right now and where you want to be. It is an obstacle, a challenge, or a question that does not have an immediate or obvious answer. And the word creative, of course, simply means using your imagination, your intuition, and your unique ability as a human being to generate new ideas and to see things in a new or different way. So, when we put these two words together, when we talk about creative problem solving, we are talking about the powerful art of using fresh ideas, flexible thinking, and sometimes even unusual or unconventional approaches to find solutions, especially when the normal, traditional, or logical methods are not working or are not available. Now, many of us were taught in school to think about problem solving as a very straight, logical path. It is like step 1, then step 2, then step 3, and then, boom, the answer appears. This kind of thinking is what we call linear problem solving. It is like a mathematical formula. If you know that A plus B always equals C, then you just follow the rule and you will always get the right answer. Using our architect metaphor, this is like being a builder who is handed a perfect blueprint. The blueprint tells you exactly where every wall should go, where every window should be placed, and what materials to use. The job of the builder is not to invent or to design. It is to execute the plan with precision and accuracy. And let's be clear, this kind of logical thinking is incredibly useful and important in many parts of life. It is what helps us to follow a recipe to cook a dish, to assemble a piece of furniture, or to solve a straightforward math problem. The steps are clear, the outcome is predictable, and efficiency is key. But what about the problems that do not come with a clear instruction manual? What about the challenges that are messy, complex, ambiguous, and confusing? What about the times when you are not handed a blueprint, but instead you are shown an empty lot of land, a space full of possibilities, but also full of unknowns? That is where creative problem solving becomes not just a helpful skill, but an essential one. It is the work of the architect, not just the builder. It is not about following a pre-written set of rules. It is about adopting a completely different mindset. It is about the way you approach the problem from the very beginning. Instead of asking the linear, blueprint-following question, what is the one correct answer? A creative problem solver starts by asking a much more open, architectural question. What are all the possible things we could build here? You begin to see the problem not as a solid wall, but as a flexible space that you can look at from many different angles. You start to ask yourself curious, what if questions. What if we tried something completely different from what everyone else has built? What if the limitations of this land, the strange shape or the rocky soil, are not weaknesses, but are actually interesting features we can design around. What if the problem is not really the problem, but the way I am defining the problem is the problem? This fundamental shift in questioning is the key that unlocks the door to creative solutions. Let me give you a more detailed example to make this concept more real and tangible. Imagine a woman named Isabelle. Isabelle is the marketing manager for a small, independent bookstore in her town. The bookstore is struggling. Fewer and fewer people are coming in to buy books. The problem is clear. The store needs more customers and more sales to survive. Isabelle's boss, a very logical and traditional thinker, hands her a blueprint of solutions. He says, "Let's offer a 10% discount. Let's put some ads in the local newspaper. Let's try what has worked for other stores." Isabelle follows this blueprint. She runs the discount, places the ads, but very little changes. The problem persists. The linear, blueprint-following approach has failed. Isabelle realizes she needs to stop being just a builder and start being an architect. She decides to look at the situation not as a problem to be solved with old formulas, but as an empty lot full of possibilities. She stops asking, "How can we sell more books?" and starts asking a more creative question. How can we make our bookstore a place where people want to be? This new question changes everything. She starts to brainstorm new ideas. She doesn't judge them at first. She just writes them all down. A coffee bar inside the store. A children's story time on Saturday mornings. A book club for mystery lovers. A series of workshops with local authors. A comfortable seating area with cozy chairs. She is no longer just thinking about selling a product. She is thinking about designing an experience. She is not just following a blueprint. She is creating a new one. You see, creative problem-solving is not just about being smart in a traditional academic sense. It is about being open, curious, and flexible. It is about being willing to try, to experiment without knowing the outcome, to fail. And then, this is the most important part, to learn from that failure and try again in a different way. A creative solution does not always have to be a huge, world-changing invention. Often, it is something very small and subtle. It might be a tiny shift in your perspective. It might be a new question you had not thought to ask before. It might be a new way of combining two old, familiar ideas. It is about choosing a mindset of curiosity over a feeling of being stuck. It is about choosing to be flexible instead of frustrated. And here is something incredibly empowering that I want you to hold on to. You do not have to be a professional artist, a celebrated designer, or a famous inventor to be a creative person. We are all born with an innate capacity for creativity. Creativity can show up in the way you cook a meal, in the way you organize your study notes, in the way you deal with a stressful situation, or in the way you manage your time and your budget. It is not just a rare talent that some people possess and others do not. It is a fundamental human skill. And like any skill, whether it is learning to play the piano or learning to speak English, it is something you can practice, develop, and grow stronger in over time. And the more you practice the art of thinking like an architect of possibilities, the more confident you will become in your amazing ability to solve life's inevitable problems. Not just logically, but with imagination, with resilience, and with grace. So, the next time you find yourself facing a challenge, whether it is big or small, I invite you to try this. Just pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, Am I following an old blueprint that is not working? Or can I give myself permission to look at this like an empty lot, full of new possibilities? You might be absolutely amazed by the answers that come to you when you allow yourself to think just a little bit differently. That is the true heart of creative problem solving. It is not just about finding a solution to the problem, but about growing as a thinker and as a person while you are doing it. In the past, perhaps for our parents or our grandparents' generation, the world felt, in many ways, like a more stable and predictable place. The paths through life were often clearer and more well-defined. People would often learn a trade or a profession, and they could reasonably expect to work in that same field for many years, sometimes even for their entire career. The rules for success were generally understood. If you studied hard, worked diligently, and followed the established path, you could expect a certain level of security and progress. The world, in a sense, came with a set of blueprints. Of course, life has always been full of problems and challenges, but the solutions were often more readily available. You could ask an elder for their time-tested advice. You could follow the traditions of your culture, which had been developed over generations, or you could look up the answer in a book or an encyclopedia. But today, the world we live in is a profoundly different place. It is moving and changing at a speed that is unprecedented in human history. Technology is not just changing a few industries, it is changing everything. The way we work, the way we learn, the way we connect with each other, the way we live our daily lives. Jobs and even entire industries that were stable just a decade ago are now disappearing, and new jobs that we could not have even imagined are emerging overnight. The blueprints of the past are becoming obsolete. We now live in a world that is defined by constant change, by overwhelming complexity, and by a deep sense of uncertainty. Military and business strategists have a term for this kind of environment. They call it a VUCA world. VUCA is an acronym that stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Let's break that down in simple terms because it perfectly explains why creative problem solving is so essential today. Volatility means that things are changing very fast and unpredictably. A new technology can emerge and disrupt an entire industry in just a few years. A political event on one side of the world can affect the economy on the other side of the world overnight. In a volatile world, rigid plans break easily. We need to be flexible and adaptable. Think of a sailor on the ocean. On a calm day, a simple plan to go from one point to another works fine. But in a volatile storm, with winds and waves changing every second, the sailor cannot just stick to the original plan. They must constantly adjust, react, and find creative ways to navigate the storm. Our world today is more like a stormy sea than a calm lake. Uncertainty means that we cannot predict the future with any real confidence. In the past, we could look at historical trends to forecast what would happen next. But today, the future is much less certain. We do not know what the jobs of the future will be. We do not know how new technologies will shape our societies. In an uncertain world, we cannot rely on old maps. We need an internal compass. This is where creative problem-solving becomes our compass. It is the skill of being able to move forward, step by step, even when you cannot see the final destination. It is about trusting your ability to figure things out as you go. Complexity means that our problems have many different, interconnected parts. Think about a problem like traffic congestion in a big city. It is not just a transportation problem. It is also an economic problem, how it affects businesses, an environmental problem, the pollution from cars, a social problem, the stress it causes for commuters, and a political problem, who should pay for new roads or public transport. All these parts are linked together like a spider's web. You cannot solve one part without affecting all the others. In a complex world, there are no simple, easy answers. We need creative thinkers who can see the whole system and find solutions that address multiple parts of the problem at once. And finally, ambiguity means that information is often unclear, incomplete, or can be interpreted in multiple ways. The right answer is rarely obvious. A situation might look like a threat to one person and an opportunity to another. For example, the rise of artificial intelligence is seen by some as a threat to jobs, and by others as an opportunity to create new tools that will help humanity. Both might be true. In an ambiguous world, we need to be able to hold multiple perspectives at once, to be comfortable with shades of gray, and to make decisions even when we do not have all the information. This requires a creative and flexible mind. So, this VUCA world, this world that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, is the world we all live in now. And that is precisely why the skill of creative problem-solving matters more today than ever before. In a VUCA world, the old blueprints are no longer reliable. We need more architects, more designers of new solutions. We need people who can remain calm in the face of uncertainty, people who can think with clarity when everything seems chaotic, and people who can find new, innovative, and compassionate ways forward, even when the path ahead is completely invisible. And this need for creativity is not just for a special elite group of people. You absolutely do not need to be a painter, a musician, a poet, or a writer to be a deeply creative thinker. Creativity is not only about producing art, it is about your fundamental approach to life and its many challenges. It is about how you respond when you are faced with a problem, and the usual, logical, well-known way to solve it is no longer working or is not available. A doctor who devises a new, more compassionate way to explain a difficult diagnosis to a patient's family is being creative. A teacher who completely redesigns their classroom and their teaching style to help a neurodivergent student feel safe and engaged is being profoundly creative. A community leader who figures out how to bring together different, opposing groups of people to work on a common goal is being creative at the highest level. These are all powerful, world-changing acts of creative problem-solving in action. Let's return to our story of Isabelle at the struggling bookstore. She is living in a VUCA world. The volatility of the market means that online retailers can change their prices instantly, making it hard for her small store to compete. The uncertainty of the future means she does not know if people will still be reading physical books in 10 years. The complexity of her problem involves not just sales, but community engagement, marketing, and creating a unique atmosphere. And the ambiguity is that she does not know for sure which of her new ideas will work. In this situation, her old blueprint of discounts and ads is useless. She has to become an architect. She has to use her creativity to design a new future for the store. She decides to prototype one of her ideas. She hosts a small, book lovers' tea party on a Friday afternoon. It is a small experiment. To her surprise, 20 people show up. They do not just buy books, they talk to each other, they make new friends, and they tell her how much they loved the experience. Isabelle realizes that she has found a clue. Her bookstore's future is not just in selling books, it is in building a community. Stories like this show us something incredibly powerful. When our resources are limited, when we do not have a lot of money, or time, or technology, our creativity often becomes our most precious and powerful asset. We learn to see possibilities where other people only see dead ends. We learn to be resourceful. We learn to build something useful and beautiful out of the pieces of a failed plan. And this ability to adapt, to pivot, to rethink, and to reimagine is quickly becoming the single most important skill for success and fulfillment in the 21st century. This is not just about your career. Creative problem-solving matters immensely in your personal life as well. Let's say your best friend is feeling down, and your usual words of advice and comfort do not seem to be helping. What do you do? Or imagine you have been trying very hard to build a new healthy habit, like exercising regularly, but you keep losing motivation. How do you adjust your approach? These deeply human situations do not have simple, one-size-fits-all answers. They require you to look at things differently, to listen more deeply, to ask better questions, and maybe even to try something you have never done before. That is creativity in action in your own heart and in your own home. And the most wonderful news is, you already have this ability within you. You have likely used it thousands of times in your life. Think about a time when you had to cook a meal for unexpected guests, using only the ingredients you had in your kitchen. Or think about a time when you found a new creative way to make a child laugh when they were crying. Or think about a time when you had a very limited budget, but you still managed to create a beautiful, meaningful gift for someone you love. These small, everyday moments are all powerful proof that you can, and you do, solve problems in creative and resourceful ways. So now, let me ask you to pause and reflect for a moment. When was the last time you had to figure something out with limited resources or under pressure? It could have been a big challenge or a small one. It might have been at work or at home. Maybe it was just yesterday. Think about how you responded. Did you feel frustrated and overwhelmed? And did you freeze up? Or did you manage to pause, to take a breath, and to start looking for a different way, a hidden opportunity? The more you practice this skill, the more you consciously choose to approach life's problems with a creative and open mindset, the easier and more natural it becomes. And the profound truth is this: in a world that is full of unexpected and complex challenges, creative thinking is not just a helpful or desirable skill. It is essential. It is what gives us hope. It is what gives us resilience. And it is what gives us the tools we need to keep moving forward, with grace and with strength, no matter what challenges come our way. As we continue our journey into the world of creative problem-solving, it is crucial that we take an honest and compassionate look at the things that can block our natural creativity. Because let's be truthful with ourselves, we are not always in the right state of mind to think creatively. There are times when, even if we want to find a new solution, we just feel stuck. Our minds feel foggy and slow. Ideas seem distant and out of reach. And no matter how hard we try to force a new idea, nothing feels fresh or original. So, why does this happen? What are these invisible walls that we sometimes build around our own minds? Using our metaphor, what stops the architect from designing? Understanding these blocks is the first step to dismantling them and freeing our creative potential. Let's start with the barriers that exist inside of us, our internal blocks. One of the biggest and most powerful creativity killers is the fear of failure. In our architectural metaphor, this is the fear of the blank page. It is the terror that an architect can feel when they are faced with an empty piece of paper and the pressure to create something brilliant. This fear often manifests as a small, quiet, but persistent voice in the back of your head. It is the voice that whispers, "What if my design is ugly?" Or, "What if the building falls down?" Or, "What if people laugh at my idea?" That fear can be so powerful that it paralyzes you. It can stop you from even drawing the first line. The problem is, creativity, by its very nature, requires experimentation. It needs you to be willing to try things without knowing the outcome. It needs trial and error. If you are only ever willing to build the designs that you know for certain will work, then you will never take the risks that are necessary for real breakthroughs and innovations. You will stay safe, but you will also stay stuck in the past. Closely connected to the fear of failure is something that sounds positive, but can be just as damaging: perfectionism. This is the architect who wants every single line of the blueprint to be absolutely perfect before they even show it to anyone. Perfectionism is the belief that everything you do has to be done flawlessly. There can be no mistakes, no mess, no imperfections. And while striving for excellence is a good quality, perfectionism is different. It often creates an immense amount of pressure that actually makes it harder to think clearly and creatively. You spend more time worrying about getting the end result exactly right than you do exploring new and interesting ideas along the way. You are so focused on the final, perfect building that you forget to enjoy the messy, exciting process of designing it. But creativity needs freedom, not pressure. It needs the freedom to be messy, to be imperfect, and to be playful. When we give ourselves permission to create a good enough first draft, a rough sketch, that is often when our most interesting and original ideas start to appear. Another major internal block is self-doubt. This is when you do not trust your own thoughts or believe in your own value as an architect. You might have a brilliant design idea, but then you immediately dismiss it, thinking, "I'm not creative enough to pull this off." Or, "Other, more experienced architects probably have much better ideas than I do." But here is a universal truth. Everyone doubts themselves sometimes. Even the most famous and successful architects, artists, and innovators experience moments of profound self-doubt. The difference is, they have learned not to let that doubt stop them from picking up the pencil. They have learned to acknowledge the feeling of doubt, and then to take action anyway. Creativity is not about being the best or the most talented person in the world. It is about being brave enough to trust your own unique vision and to try. We also get blocked by what we can call rigid thinking. In our metaphor, this is the architect who is trapped in the prison of past blueprints. This is when we hold on too tightly to our existing rules, our habits, or what we already know to be true. It is like an architect who only knows how to design one type of building, a square box. And so, no matter what the client needs or what the landscape looks like, they keep designing square boxes. When our thinking becomes rigid and inflexible, we stop asking questions. We stay inside our comfort zone, where everything feels safe and predictable, but where nothing new can ever grow. It is like sitting in a small, windowless room and wondering why you cannot see the stars. Sometimes, you have to have the courage to step outside and look up. There is another powerful mental block that psychologists call confirmation bias. This is our brain's natural tendency to look for, interpret, and remember information in a way that confirms what we already believe. Our brains like to be right, so if we have an initial idea about how to solve a problem, we will unconsciously look for all the evidence that proves our idea is brilliant, and we will ignore all the evidence that suggests our idea might have flaws. Imagine a team of architects who fall in love with their first design for a new building. Because of confirmation bias, they only seek out opinions from people who also love the design. They dismiss any criticism as being negative or unhelpful. They only look at data that supports their chosen materials. As a result, they might end up building a beautiful building that is also very impractical or too expensive, because they were blind to its problems from the very beginning. Confirmation bias is a huge creativity killer because it stops us from seeing other possibilities. It makes us defend our first idea instead of searching for the best idea. There is another fascinating mental block that psychologists call functional fixedness. This is a cognitive bias that limits a person to using an object only in the way it is traditionally used. For example, if you are given a hammer, you see it only as a tool for hitting nails. You might not think to use it as a paperweight or as a pendulum for a clock. Let me tell you about a classic psychology experiment called the candle problem. Participants are given a candle, a box of thumbtacks, and a book of matches, and they are asked to attach the candle to a wall in such a way that the wax does not drip onto the floor. Many people try to tack the candle directly to the wall, which does not work. The creative solution is to realize that the box holding the thumbtacks is not just a container. It can also be used as a shelf. You empty the box, tack the box to the wall, and place the candle inside it. The difficulty people have with this puzzle is functional fixedness. They see the box only in its normal function, as a container for tacks, and they cannot see its potential as a shelf. In our daily lives, we often do this with ideas, tools, and even people. We put them in a box, and we cannot see their potential for other uses. This is a huge block to creativity. Now, let's talk about the external blocks, the things in the world around us that can make creativity more difficult. One of the biggest external blocks is the pressure to always be right. In many school systems, at many workplaces, and even within many families, we are often taught from a young age that making mistakes is a bad thing. In a typical classroom, students are often punished with a bad grade for giving a wrong answer, instead of being encouraged to explore different possibilities. This kind of system does not leave much room for curiosity, for experimentation, or for creative risk-taking. It teaches people to follow the established blueprints, not to question them or design new ones. But if you look at the history of human progress, many of the greatest discoveries in science, in medicine, in art, came from people who asked unusual questions, who made many mistakes, or who failed hundreds of times before they finally found their breakthrough. There is also the powerful block of judgment from other people and from ourselves. Maybe when you were a child, a teacher told you that your drawing was silly. Maybe someone once laughed at your accent when you were trying to speak English. Maybe a colleague dismissed your idea in a meeting. Even very small moments like that can plant seeds of doubt that can grow over time. As a result, you might start to edit your own ideas before you even speak them out loud. You think to yourself, it is better to stay quiet than to say something stupid. But the problem is, when we silence our own ideas to avoid judgment, we also silence our creativity. We stop ourselves before we have even begun. All of these blocks, fear, perfectionism, doubt, rigid thinking, confirmation bias, functional fixedness, and judgment, are like mental traffic jams. Imagine you are sitting in your car, and your engine is running. You are ready to go, but you cannot move. Your ideas are all waiting patiently behind a red light, and your inner critic is the one holding the stop sign. But creativity needs movement. It needs green lights. It needs open roads. It needs space to breathe. So, how do we begin to clear this mental traffic? The very first step is simply to notice the blocks. Just recognizing them and naming them can make a huge difference. The next time you feel stuck, ask yourself, am I afraid to fail right now? Am I trying to be too perfect? Am I only looking for evidence that I am right? Once you name the block, it loses some of its power over you. You can then consciously choose to act differently. You can remind yourself that mistakes are a necessary part of the process. You can remind yourself that creativity is not about having all the answers. It is about being brave enough to ask new questions. One of the most powerful things you can do is to change the story you tell yourself. Instead of saying, I am not a creative person, you can try saying, I am in the process of learning how to think more creatively. Instead of thinking, this has to be perfect, you can say, let's just see where this idea goes. Let's play with it. This simple shift in your internal language can open up new doors in your mind. It is like intentionally turning that red light into a green one. So, the next time you feel stuck, please remember that the block is not a permanent part of who you are. It is just a temporary signal, a sign that something needs to shift in your mindset, in your environment, or perhaps in your expectations of yourself. And the most empowering news is that you already have everything you need inside of you to make that shift. Sometimes, all it takes is one deep breath, a little bit of courage, and a willingness to begin, even if you do not know exactly how it will end. Now we arrive at the most practical, the most actionable, and arguably the most exciting part of our entire conversation today. We have explored the deep meaning of creative problem solving as the art of being an architect of possibilities. We understand why this skill is so critically important in our complex modern world. And we have taken an honest look at the internal and external walls that can block our natural creativity. Now, let's talk about the tools. If you are going to be an architect, you need a toolkit. You need practical, real-life strategies that you can use to generate new ideas, to see problems from a fresh perspective, and to build innovative solutions. So, in this section, we are going to fill your mental toolkit with some powerful and easy-to-use techniques. The very first tool, and perhaps the most important one for any architect, is the art of surveying the land. Before an architect can even think about designing a building, they must first deeply understand the piece of land they are working with. They walk the ground. They study the sunlight. They look at the surrounding environment. In problem solving, this means we must first resist the urge to jump immediately to a solution. Instead, we must take the time to deeply understand and define the problem itself. Albert Einstein famously said, "If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions." This is the essence of surveying the land. How do you do this? You do it by asking powerful questions. Let's go back to our story of Isabelle and her struggling bookstore. Her initial problem statement was, "How can we sell more books?" But after surveying the land, by talking to her customers and observing her community, she reframed the problem. Her new problem statement became, "How can we make our bookstore a place where people want to be?" This new definition opened up a whole new world of possible solutions. So, when you face a problem, ask yourself questions like, what is the real problem here, underneath the surface problem? Who is this problem affecting, and how do they see it? What assumptions am I making about this problem that might not be true? Spending time on this first step is never a waste of time. A well-defined problem is a problem that is already half solved. Once you have surveyed the land and have a clear understanding of the problem, it is time for the second tool: sketching wildly. This is the phase of divergent thinking. An architect, in the early stages of design, does not just draw one perfect plan. They make dozens of quick, rough sketches. Some are practical, some are fantastical, some are even impossible. The goal is not to find the right answer immediately. The goal is to explore the full range of possibilities. In problem solving, this is the classic technique of brainstorming. The rule of brainstorming is simple. There are no bad ideas. You want to generate as many ideas as possible, without any judgment or criticism. You can do this alone with a notebook or with a group of people. The key is to separate the act of creating ideas from the act of evaluating them. Let your imagination run wild. What is the most boring solution you can think of? What is the most expensive one? What is the silliest one? What would a child suggest? By allowing yourself to sketch wildly, you break free from your usual rigid thinking patterns, and you create a rich pool of raw material from which a truly innovative solution can emerge. After you have a long list of wild sketches, it is time for the third tool: building models. This is the phase of convergent thinking and prototyping. An architect would never build a full-sized skyscraper based on just a rough sketch. First, they build a small-scale model. This model allows them to see their idea in 3 dimensions, to identify potential problems, and to get feedback from others before they spend a huge amount of time and money. In our daily lives, we can do the same thing. We can create small, low-cost experiments to test our creative ideas. This is called prototyping. A prototype is not the final solution. It is just a way to learn. Let's look at Isabelle again. She had a list of many ideas for her bookstore. Instead of trying to implement all of them at once, which would be expensive and risky, she decided to build a model. She chose one idea, the book lover's tea party, and she created a small-scale prototype. She did not build a new cafe in her store. She just brought in a simple kettle and some tea bags and set up a few extra chairs for one afternoon. This was a low-risk experiment. By running this prototype, she learned a huge amount. She learned that people loved the idea, that Friday afternoons were a good time, and that people wanted more opportunities to connect. This successful prototype gave her the confidence and the data she needed to develop the idea further. So, whatever your creative idea is, ask yourself, what is the smallest, simplest, fastest way I can test this idea in the real world? Prototyping is a powerful way to learn by doing. The fourth tool in our architect's toolkit is the art of borrowing from other buildings. This is the power of analogical thinking. The best architects do not just look at other buildings for inspiration. They look at nature, at the structure of a seashell. They look at music, at the rhythm and harmony of a symphony. They look at history, at the design of ancient temples. They take ideas from one field and they apply them in a new and interesting way in their own field. We can do the same thing when we are solving problems. If you are stuck on a business problem, you could ask, how would a biologist solve this? A biologist might think about ecosystems, about how different parts of a system work together in balance. This could give you a new insight into your team dynamics. If you are struggling with a personal relationship problem, you could ask, how would a diplomat solve this? A diplomat is an expert in negotiation, in finding common ground, and in communicating respectfully. This can give you new strategies for your conversation. By looking for analogies in completely different fields, you can break free from your usual way of thinking and discover truly innovative solutions. Finally, a fifth and very powerful tool is embracing the power of constraints. This is a very counterintuitive idea. We usually think that to be creative, we need complete freedom, unlimited time, an unlimited budget, and unlimited resources. But very often, the opposite is true. Constraints, having limitations, can actually be a powerful trigger for creativity. When you have fewer resources, you are forced to be more resourceful. When you have less time, you are forced to focus on what truly matters. Let me tell you a quick story. There is a famous creative challenge given to writers to write a complete story in only 6 words. A famous, though perhaps not true, example is attributed to the writer Ernest Hemingway. The story is, For Sale, Baby Shoes, Never Worn. In just 6 words, this story creates a powerful emotional impact. The constraint of having only 6 words forced the writer to be incredibly creative and efficient with their language. So, the next time you are facing a problem and you feel like you do not have enough time or money or help, try to reframe it. Instead of saying, I can't solve this because I have no resources, ask yourself, how can I solve this given that I have no resources? Sometimes, the most creative solutions are born not from abundance, but from scarcity. These 5 tools, surveying the land, sketching wildly, building models, borrowing from other buildings, and embracing constraints, are your architect's toolkit. They are practical techniques that you can start using today to become a more confident and effective creative problem solver. As we come to the very end of our deep and comprehensive exploration together, I want to take a few moments to review and recap the most important ideas we have discussed in this episode. It is always a valuable practice to go over the key concepts one last time. When we hear something multiple times, explained in different ways, It helps that knowledge to move from our short-term memory into our long-term understanding. We have journeyed through the rich and fascinating landscape of creative problem-solving, framing it not just as a skill, but as a mindset, the mindset of an architect of possibility. We began our conversation today by understanding the core concept of creative problem-solving. We learned that it is profoundly different from linear, logical thinking. Linear thinking is like being a builder following a perfect blueprint. It is efficient and useful for known problems. But creative problem-solving is like being an architect faced with an empty lot. It is the art of envisioning and designing something new when there is no existing plan to follow. It is about asking open, curious questions instead of searching for a single correct answer. Then, we looked at why this skill is more important now than ever before. We explored the idea of our modern VUCA world, a world that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. In such a world, the old blueprints are often outdated or useless. We need more architects, more people in every field who can think flexibly, adapt to change, and design new, innovative solutions to messy, complex problems. We saw through the story of Isabelle and her bookstore how this creative mindset can turn a struggling situation into a thriving community hub. We also took an honest and compassionate look at the walls that can block our creativity. We used our architectural metaphor to understand these barriers. We talked about the fear of the blank page, which is the fear of failure. We talked about the prison of past blueprints, which is our own rigid thinking and habits. We identified the harsh voice of the internal inspector, which is our own perfectionism and self-doubt. We also uncovered hidden mental traps, like confirmation bias and functional fixedness. Understanding these blocks is the first crucial step to dismantling them. Most importantly, we equipped ourselves with the architect's toolkit, a set of practical, real-life strategies to help us think more creatively. We learned about the importance of first surveying the land, taking the time to deeply understand and reframe our problems. We talked about the power of sketching wildly, using divergent thinking and brainstorming to generate a wide range of ideas without judgment. We explored the wisdom of building models, using prototyping and small experiments to test our ideas in the real world. We discovered the magic of borrowing from other buildings, using analytical thinking to find inspiration in unrelated fields. And we learned about the counterintuitive strategy of embracing the power of constraints. And finally, we reminded ourselves that creativity is not a rare talent that some people are born with. It is a skill that can be developed through practice, progress, and patience. It is a journey, not a destination. It is about becoming a better architect, a more confident designer of your own solutions and your own life, one small, creative step at a time. So now, here we are, at the end of our journey for today, standing together in that quiet hallway of possibility. We have looked closely at the familiar door, the door of routine, of safety, of the known. And we have spent our time together learning about the other door, the shimmering door of the unknown, the door of creativity. We have learned that it is not as scary as it seems. We have learned that we all have the capacity to turn the handle, to step through, and to begin designing something new. The main message of our entire episode, the one idea I hope you will carry with you, is this. In a world that no longer provides clear blueprints for a successful, or a happy life, we each have the profound opportunity, and perhaps even the beautiful responsibility, to become the architects of our own experience. We can learn to look at our problems not as impassable walls, but as empty lots full of incredible potential. We can learn to quiet the harsh voice of the inner critic, and to instead listen to the gentle whispers of our own curiosity. We can equip ourselves with the tools of creative thinking, and we can practice using them, not just on big projects, but in the small, everyday moments of our lives. So as we conclude, I do not want to leave you with a challenge. I want to leave you with an invitation. I invite you to see yourself as an architect, starting today. Your life is not a building that you were simply placed in. It is a space that you have the power to design. Your mind is not a fixed structure. It is a dynamic studio where new ideas can be born. So, here is your invitation for this week. Choose one small, empty lot in your life. It could be a nagging problem, a boring routine, or a stuck relationship. And just for a few minutes, play the role of the architect. Do not try to solve it immediately. Just be curious. Survey the land. Ask new questions. Sketch some wild ideas on a piece of paper. Even the silly ones. What is one small, playful experiment you could try? What is one old assumption you could let go of? You do not need to build a masterpiece overnight. Just draw one new line. Lay one new stone. That single creative action is a declaration. It is you saying to the world, and more importantly, to yourself, I am a creator. I am a problem solver. I am the architect of my own life. Thank you so very, very much for spending this time with me today. I know that your time is your most precious resource, and I am so grateful that you chose to invest some of it here. I hope this episode has given you something meaningful to think about. I hope it has encouraged you, perhaps challenged you in a good way, and most of all, I hope it has reminded you that creativity is not some magical power that belongs to other people. It is a beautiful, powerful, and essential part of what it means to be human. It is a light that you already have deep inside you, something you can nurture, grow, and use to make your life and the world around you a little brighter. If you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Please take a moment to share your thoughts. What did you learn today? What idea stood out to you the most? You can leave a comment, send a message, or even recommend this episode to a friend who you think could use a little creative spark in their life. And finally, if you have not already, please consider subscribing to the podcast so that you do not miss our future episodes. Let's keep practicing, let's keep growing, and let's keep designing our best lives together. Until next time, stay curious, stay patient with yourself, and most of all, stay creative. You are doing a wonderful job, and I am proud of you for being here today.